You got one heck of a story.
He hit a body. Needed an ambulance, and he didn't. He said it.
The police called. I mean, it was certainly one of the strangest phone calls I've ever taken, because they said they'd found a body in my initial.
Well, hello, friends and family. In the last couple of episodes, we've been looking into my great-great-grandfather, Napoleon Bonaparte Trenner. I had an episode where I was looking for him, the last episode where I found it. This may seem like I'm deviating from that story, and at first I thought I was. I found this story about 4 or 5 years ago. I've been sitting on this footage for about 4 or 5 years. My family's asked, well, why are you deviating from our family story to tell this one? Well, I just felt I should. I just felt like this is a story that I should be telling right now. As I neared the end of my research, though, something jumped off of a page. So stay with me. We'll see if there's a connection between this and my family. Let me begin by telling you who the characters in this story are. You saw Janet. She is the 911 operator that I just met by chance. There's Eric Jacobson, who is the CEO of the Battle of Franklin Trust. I've spoken with him several times. There will be a Union veteran and his son. There's going to be a Confederate soldier and his son. The main character is one that we'll not get to meet. I don't even know his name. I don't even know where he's from. But I do want to take this episode in his memory.
You used to do 911. You ran the 911 center here in Williamson County
For the city of Franklin.
Okay, for 9-10 years, something like that?
About 10 years.
And 9 or 10 years ago, you got a phone call. They were digging for something, and they hit.
It was a construction worker, and at the time I thought he had hit a gas line, but he hit a body.
The police called Carnton, I believe. Yeah, it was Carnton. It wouldn't have been Carter House. Anyways, I was here, and I mean, it was certainly one of the strangest phone calls I've ever taken, because they said they'd found a body, and my initial reaction was, well, why are you calling me? And then they said, well, we think it's Civil War related.
He hit a body.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you hit a body with? Was he using a backhoe, or were they just?
I didn't ask.
Okay.
There he was, buried, all those years, and then to be uncovered by a backhoe.
All I did was ask if he needed an ambulance, and he didn't. He said it was skeletal remains, and so we sent law enforcement out there. Officers, sergeants, lieutenants, they want something, they tell the dispatcher to do it. So I was doing all that. Call so-and-so from Carton, call so-and-so from Carter House, call. So we made several phone calls to representatives in the area, just so we were respectful of the body.
I was one of the first people on site, and I've seen a lot of strange stuff come out of the ground, but.
And this was on Columbia
Avenue.
Columbia
yes,
Avenue. In relation to the Chick-fil-A down there where?
Town, which is pretty close to where the Chick-fil-A is today off of Highway 31, was the scene of some pretty sharp fighting on the evening of December 17th, which was after Nashville.
The whole area was under construction, so I'm not 100% sure the exact location.
Okay.
But it was Columbia Avenue.
Okay, so on Columbia Avenue. They run into a body.
They
call law enforcement.
Call law enforcement. And when the officers arrived on scene, the skeletal remains had both Union and Confederate buttons on the rib cage.
The backhoe had kind of done some damage to the top of the head area, as I remember. But it was intact. And I remember seeing teeth and various bones. And Anyways, that started it.
When did you realize it was a Civil War? It was related to the Civil War.
Well, they had already figured that out. The police were there, and they'd found several buttons, and that was the telltale sign right away. I mean, they found these eagle eye buttons, which were from a jacket.
Were there any jacket remains? Just the buttons and the skeleton.
There were some small cloth fragments. I think around the wrists, and there were some nails down near the feet, which indicated he'd been wearing boots. So yeah, I mean, it was just the skeleton. He was.
We did not exhume the body right away until we got representatives from Daughters of the Confederacy, and I don't know who we got on the Union side, because we wanted to make sure it was exhumed properly.
Why would it have both Confederate buttons and Union?
What I was told is that the weather was really severe that winter. And so as deceased soldiers fell, other soldiers would take what they needed from the uniform or the body, whether it be weaponry, whatever, food, money, whatever it might be.
As I recall, something like 18 to 24 inches down, he'd been buried facing east, his hands across his chest. So it was, whoever buried him took the time to bury him as they saw appropriately.
So they believe that's why he had both sides on him. They did send him, I'm not sure if it was to UT, but they did send samples of DNA to figure out which side he was from, and it came back and they could never figure out which side he represented.
I think it was the folks at MTSU that actually did, I think they did some DNA extraction. They were able to develop the idea that he was a male in his mid to late 20s, but you couldn't really tell which side.
Figured he was an American.
Mm-hmm.
Right away, there started all the talk about who he was. I mean,
Sure.
we'll never know.
Never.
He was a long distance away from where there were Franklin casualties. Not that there weren't wounded brought back to that area, and he could have been that.
He was just one of us for whatever.
Yeah, and there is a beautifully large monument where he is buried down. I'm not sure downtown where it is, but it's the unknown Civil War soldier. The burial, I didn't actually go to the funeral.
They had a funeral.
Yes.
It's one of those events that was so unique, and when you're on the inside of it, I don't even... You probably could never do it again.
No.
But what was the most beautiful thing in the world, as far as being an American, that I saw, was we had, I would say, hundreds, if not more, Civil War reenactors from both sides come together, walk behind the body, through the streets, through the downtown square, in order for him to be buried. And it was beautiful, absolutely stunning. And they wore all the period garb and gave him a both Confederate and Union funeral.
That's very touching to me just to hear that.
Oh, it was. Because here are two sides, even though they're reenactors, but they came together and they came from all over the country.
Okay.
So the reenactors were all mostly folks who've done it at various events, living historians and soldiers. And there was a procession from the church to the cemetery.
Yeah.
There was a guard who watched over the body, I think for like 48 or 72 hours before the funeral.
Full military.
Yeah, which was really, it's very unique. There's nothing like it. You'll never see anything like it again. He was someone whose last moments was right here in 1864. Well, I believe they gathered this soil from all of the states of soldiers who who fought at the Battle
I
of
see.
Franklin.
Okay.
Okay, we're just now cleared for session.
Wow. The image of that old man standing there saluting an unknown soldier in that casket is going to stay in my mind for a while. I'm sure he had thoughts of his own dad. You know, it's not often, maybe this has never happened in my lifetime, where the past and the present collided with such force. I stop and think that 620,000 men died in this war. Multiply that misery because each one had parents and siblings and perhaps a wife and children. As my great-great-grandfather, his dad was still alive in Virginia. My great-great-grandfather's wife was still alive in West Point, Mississippi. And he had a little boy, Alexander, who he would never see. Alexander would never see his dad. This happened 100,000 times, 620,000 times, that kind of misery. Why did they do it? Why did they do it? Why did they leave homes and families and go do this? 620,000 men died. 3 million men fought. There were probably close to 3 million reasons why they did this. But the final outcome was our Union was preserved and we abolished slavery. That means people were free. Freedom is a weird word. Those first 4 letters spelling free, often that means at no cost. Yet freedom comes with a cost, a great cost. And that cost, it's not money. You can't go to the store. You can't go down to the hardware store and say, I'll take a pound of freedom. No, the freedom that we enjoy today came at great cost of human lives, sacrifice. It was blood. It was pain. It hurt to get this kind of freedom. I think we owe it to these men, our ancestors, to do all that we can to vote in freedom, to fight for freedom. Let's keep it going while we can. And that's one reason I'm doing this channel. It's the reason I'm changing the whole message of what I'm doing here. I don't want to just do family stuff anymore. I want to see our country survive. And I want to encourage you to study our past, learn human nature, look what's coming down the road, be prepared for it. We owe it to our ancestors, but even more than that, we owe it to our existing families to do all we can to keep America free, to maintain the Bill of Rights. I don't want to see my first rights, I don't want to see my freedom of speech taken away from me, and sometimes I think it is. Sometimes I feel like I'm afraid to speak out in public what I really think because of censorship. That's not the American way. Let's start with just that one. Let's maintain freedom of speech. Again, I'm going to go back to this story. This story was to keep people free. Let's keep them free. Let's stay free. I'm going to shift now. I've got some announcements that I need to make, and I hope you'll stay with me because at the very end of this, I want Eric Jacobson, the CEO of the Battle of Franklin Trust, to have the last word. I started this story not sure where it was going to go. I thought I knew the end of it, but it's not over. And in the next episode, I will tell you that it continues. I'll tell you if there's a connection between the people in this story and my family. So I hope you will come back for the next episode of Mr. Jack's Journey. So until I see you, tell your mom and them I said hey. But I'm going to end this with, I'm going to let Eric Jacobson give us his final thoughts. What do we learn from that piece of history, or just uncovering that piece of history? Does it mean anything to us today other than that fact it was just remembering?
The discovery of his body and his burial was about him, nothing else.
Okay.
It was simply about, here was one of 700,000 young men who died because of that war. And here was one who was, his family, as we said at the time, never knew what happened to him. He just never came home. So I don't know that it really says much of anything about us. It says more about him and about the people of that time, that sometimes there was just an empty chair at the table. And I think it was good to remember that the war wasn't this romantic thing that you see in, paintings or in a reenactment, that this was very real and it affected everyday people. I think maybe that's it.